4 Trojan Horses of Humanism by Harry Conn. From the 1982 revised edition by Mott Media Incorporated. Copyright Harry Conn Estate. Audiobook recorded with permission. A downloadable ebook of this title is available at pixelsoflight.org. Narrated by Joel Park. Chapter 1. 4 Trojan Horses of Humanism. Our nation's greatest problem is not one of ecology or pollution. A pine tree produces more hydrocarbons in a day than an automobile. It is estimated by at least one source that 93% of our pollution comes from nature. Moral pollution is our greatest problem, not physical pollution. The 1976 Republican National Convention could have been the most important convention in the history of our country, but it turned out to be a colossal flop. The reason it was such a failure was because they didn't face the real issue of our day, humanism. They either didn't understand its terrible effect upon our country, or they were afraid to face it out of political expediency. I personally asked one of the 2 presidential candidates this question. If you are nominated and elected to office, what are you going to do about stopping the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare from propagating their religion of humanism? We are supposed to have separation of church and state. After his 10-minute answer, a senator standing beside me said, "He didn't like your question, and he didn't understand your question." I would like to make certain you understand the real issue of our land, which is humanism. Your life can be 100 times more important to our world and our country if you will take the time and trouble to understand what I'm going to say. Not long ago, I was asked to lunch by a very successful liberal arts college president. The purpose of the lunch seemed to be to inform me of the latest trends and developments in higher education. He started by stating that previously our colleges and universities existed for the purpose of training young people to develop a disciplined mind and learn how to study. Then they could lead useful and fulfilled lives, help solve some of the problems of their day, and be useful servants to God and their fellow man. He said this is no longer the purpose of higher education. The colleges and universities now exist so that professors can seek truth in an unrestricted way. Students are now a necessary evil to pay the freight of the professor's quest. I remarked to the president, "This is quite a paradox. The colleges now exist so the professors can seek something that doesn't exist?" With a smile, he agreed. You are not considered to be educated by some people unless you believe there is no such thing as absolute truth. Even the word moral is a dirty word today in most educational circles. This same college president had just returned from a meeting at the University of Wisconsin, which was attended by 400 college and university presidents. They had agreed, but not quite unanimously, that nothing is absolutely right and nothing is absolutely wrong, and they were absolutely sure. They did, however, agree upon one absolute: belief in absolute academic freedom. In other words, they'll believe in absolutes when absolutes serve their purposes. I was reminded of what a friend of mine said to me several years ago and has said many times since. "Harry, the colleges are educating people away from their common sense in many courses." This came from the lips of a man with 10 years of higher education. Jeremiah 12:5 applies today. "If thou hast run with the footmen, and they have wearied thee, then how canst thou contend with horses? And if in the land of peace, wherein thou trustedest, they wearied thee, then how wilt thou do in the swelling of the Jordan?" Among the many ideas this portion of Scripture conveys is that if the everyday problems of running a business or serving the Lord in a church have made us weary, then how shall we contend or strive with the huge problems of life and those huge problems facing the church and our country? In the days of Jeremiah, there were 2 main ways to wage a war. One was on foot, and the other on horseback. It was many times more difficult to subdue a warrior on horseback than it was a warrior on foot. For the warrior on horseback had force, power, speed, height, and maneuverability all on his side, and was a greater tactical problem than a warrior on foot. The people of God are running with the footmen, not walking. We are to be diligent in our pursuits, as unto the Lord. The footmen, or problems, in business, for example, might include making an adequate profit, obtaining and training good employees, high accounts receivables, inadequate discounts, increased material and service costs, high sales multipliers, wanting unreasonable discounts, slow mail service, etc. The horses can be symbolic of the huge problems of life. It doesn't mean much to run a successful business if you can't do it to glorify God and serve your fellow man. Additionally, if you don't have religious, political, educational, and family freedoms, what does it matter if you can run with the footmen? All of these we are about to lose, seemingly without a struggle, after many good men gave their lives that we might have them. How are you going to contend or strive with the horses? I am certain that those few in this world who are contending with the horses do not go unnoticed or unrewarded by the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, maker of heaven and earth, even in this life. Though many may not immediately observe their rewards, they are here nevertheless. As an example, when a servant of our God gives up houses, lands, career, and sometimes his loved ones, he is not concerned for himself. He is, however, vitally concerned, but not worried, about how it will affect his children. A book was published, Who's Who of America, which was a study and analysis of the people in Who's Who. It was discovered that it took 25,000 laboring families to produce one child that would be listed in Who's Who. It required 10,000 families where the father was a skilled craftsman, electrician, tool and die maker, technician, to produce one child that would be listed in Who's Who. It showed that it took 5,000 lawyers, 6,000 Baptist preachers, 5,000 Presbyterian preachers to produce one listed in Who's Who. It showed 2,500 dentists and only 1,200 Episcopalian preachers or priests to produce a listee. It was found that for every 7 Christian missionary families, one of their children would be listed in Who's Who. Surely this is a good example of Hebrews 6:10. For God is not unrighteous to forget your work and labor of love. The person with a right motive of heart can depend upon the literal fulfillment of Mark 10:29-30 and Hebrews 6:10. Again, this is not to say that the world or even the church will notice or reward those who contend with the horses, because in our day, we don't stone the prophets, we ignore and ostracize them. In the following pages, I will seek to identify and isolate the horses of our day. I will call them the 4 Trojan horses and reveal their origin and their effect. I will then go on to explain the swelling or thicket of the Jordan. Every free democratic society in the world is presently faced with the destructive humanistic powers of the 4 Trojan horses. They are sociological, political, psychological, and theological. Perhaps prior to examination of these 4 Trojan horses, I should refresh your mind briefly on the Greek legend of the Trojan horse. The Trojan army kidnapped the queen of Sparta, Helen, and held her captive in the city of Troy. The Spartans fought an unsuccessful 10-year war with Troy to liberate their queen. The chief problem the Greeks faced in their quest to conquer the city were the insurmountable gates and walls which surrounded Troy. Ulysses, the Greek hero, thought of the idea of building a huge hollow wooden horse on wheels that could be filled with Greek warriors. The Spartans made the large horse, deposited it in front of the gate of Troy, told the Trojans it was a gift, and seemingly sailed away. The Trojans opened their gates and pulled the wooden horse into the city. A huge crowd full of curiosity gathered around the horse. A priest threw a spear against the horse and noticed the hollow sound it made. He said, "This doesn't sound right. Let us investigate this horse in a thorough way before accepting it." But no one paid attention. That night, while the Trojans were celebrating, the Greek warriors came out of the horse and opened the gates of the city to the Athenians, who then destroyed Troy. I'm reminded of the time in 1959, just before entering a classroom, where I was to lecture at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I heard a lecturer say, "The greatest problem we have in the United States is not ignorance. It is believing things and concepts that are not true." These 4 Trojan horses we are about to describe have been responsible for bringing these untruths into popular belief. I propose to show what has bred these Trojan horses, the Trojan horse farm, and reveal their main areas of activity that are giving off uncertain sounds that the churches don't seem able to discern. If the thinkers of our time cannot catch the imagination of the world to the point of effecting some profound transformation, they must succumb with it. It is amazing how the average American is unaware of what is going on today and seemingly couldn't care less. This is especially true of corporation officials who are supposed to be good stewards of their stockholders' investment, but support policies and ideologies that destroy the free enterprise system. It is a fact that people do not solve problems of which they are unaware or are unable to define, and this is why I will attempt to scratch some readers where at this time they might not feel an itch.